What's up, everyone? Welcome into the Dear Miss Fantasy Show with me, your host, Sarah Roberts. This is the official mailbag show for a player profiler. It is Wednesday, February 18th. We are, God, I didn't realize we were getting so close to the combines. We are super close to the combine. It is right around the corner. Then we've got free agency that is creeping in. We still got players to potentially be franchise tagged. We did get some franchise tag news, some new franchise tag news over the past week that we can talk about. And then we'll be closing in on the draft. It's coming up quick, guys. This offseason is going fast. That's good because I love the offseason. Thoroughly enjoy it. But obviously, we want to get back to some football action. But welcome in, guys. I appreciate you all tuning in. Gonna have a fun show today. We are going to talk, obviously, we're going to talk more free agency movers, dynasty buy low. Somebody asked me on my channel, and I'm so sorry if this is you because I have not answered it. I saw the question at a glance. I did not answer it yet because I actually wanted to ask you a question if you were interested in dynasty content. Person who commented, they asked if I do dynasty content for this show. I often kind of mention it because it is through Player Profiler, which obviously has a heavy focus on dynasties. So that applies to this audience. But when it comes to my YouTube channel, I never know if people are like, I should poll my audience or something. I don't know if my audience actually plays Dynasty or is interested in Dynasty or wants to know more about Dynasty or wants to get into Dynasty. But if anyone is interested in me doing Dynasty content, I would, if you guys want it, I can provide it for sure. Videos on that and whatnot. I do play Dynasty. I love Dynasty. So yeah, I do mention it here, but most of my short videos, I don't, just because I think most of my audience has been very redraft focused, but I could be wrong because I admittedly have, I've never asked. But yeah, we're going to talk about some buy lows, some late round values for redraft as well. And I'll be answering questions today because this is a mailbag show. I'll be answering questions today live and also questions that I pulled from my YouTube channel as well. Just as a reminder, guys, again, free agency. We talk about it early because obviously you want to get all of your rankings and speculation and stuff out early because when free agency actually starts, it goes super quick. And obviously there are guys that don't get contracts like right away, but while we know that like teams start negotiating, so timeline wise, teams start negotiating on March 9th, which is literally just right around the corner. That's crazy. I mean, February is a short month. So March 9th is like 3 weeks away, something like that. So yeah. And so that's when they can start negotiating. And then when free agency actually officially hits on March 11th, we often get just like this flurry of like announcements of contracts, right? And obviously some guys linger, but that often tends to be, older veterans that are not super in need of speedy contracts, right? They have, more time to think on what they want to do. Like Keenan Allen, right? Keenan Allen is an interesting one. And actually an interesting one because I have seen a lot of comments. So I consume a lot of content, like I create content and I consume a lot of content because I like to know what the people are talking about. I like to know what the world is talking about, right? So when I look at a lot of free agency content, I see a lot of people when they're looking at landing spots for wide receivers. A lot of people mention the Chargers as one of the top landing spots, which I find interesting, right? Because they do have, why do I not have my free agency? I'll use my computer. That's my desktop pulls things up faster. Free. No. Cap space. The Chargers obviously have a ton of money to burn. They are third behind the Titans and Raiders, which is very interesting, right? Because obviously when you look at Justin Herbert, a lot of money spent there. And usually when you get your team into these veteran quarterback situations that have, big contracts, you don't have a lot of cap space to work with unless you do some, manipulation. We'll talk about Kansas City in a second. But Chargers basically have Justin Herbert as their big marquee contract. And they all have, young wide receivers and Ladd McConkey and Quentin Johnson on first contracts, Trey Harris. Keenan Allen's contract was super cheap. They don't have any contracts that, they signed Najee Harris last year, but obviously that was a super cheap contract. So they've got, Amari and Hampton on a rookie contract. Their defense is very young as well. So they moved on, from some certain veterans, right? Like Bosa and whatnot. So they don't have a ton of massive contracts. So they've got a lot of money to burn. So I get it from a money to burn perspective. Makes sense. You've got it by that marquee, high end, top of the line receiver, right? But at the same time, I kind of feel like it would be a good time for them to really lock in and maybe look at extensions and spending big money on the defense. And then also kind of, ensuring that the offensive line doesn't crumble and it's tough, two massive, we've talked about this a lot. Joe Alt and Rashawn Slater going down is massive. You can't really replace that, but the rest of your line needs to be solid, that it can at least somewhat hold steady. It absolutely did not. It was a complete disaster. So perhaps they make some investment there. But obviously, when we're looking at free agents on the market, George Pickens is one that is often cited as, a strong landing spot with the Chargers. So it's interesting. I don't know if it'll work out that way. And the reason that they're one that is speculated a lot is because Keenan Allen was oddly enough their marquee receiver in terms of overall, receptions and targets, right? But at the end of the day, it was pretty clear as the season progressed. That was an early thing. And perhaps, I don't know if that was Justin Herbert, being excited to have Keenan Allen back and hyper targeting him at the beginning of the season, or if that was a Greg Roman thing. I don't know. But as the season went on, the targets shifted significantly. Not just the targets, but the targets and more importantly, the snap count shifted more significantly. And they were purposefully flipping so that Keenan Allen was minimized in the offense and Trey Harris was being pushed up. So I don't know if it is that people talk about vacated targets and if he leaves. I don't know if it's really that big of an issue. And obviously, if they want Keenan Allen back, it's not going to cost a lot of money. And I'm sure he wants to stay there. I doubt he wants to go to another, cold climate again. So it'll be interesting. Let's see, jump to the comments here before we move on. Thoughts from Henry Odom, thoughts on Pickens' situation, and would you keep him or trade him or CD? It might not be a bad time to put some feelers out for CD. Obviously, if Pickens were to stay, that has shown the targets were still there overall for CD. But at the end of the day, it was definitely a letdown, and the dominance of Pickens, really them not even being 1A, 1B, but just 1 and 1, right? Definitely brought down the value. It annoyed the heck out of me as a CD Lamb manager last year, thinking, where's my CD Lamb usage that I'm used to? I need that Dak to CD Lamb hyper targeting. That is what I'm looking for. So if Pickens were to remain, that's an issue. But my gut tells me that Pickens moves on. It's entirely possible that he stays, right? Because when we're looking at the situation, Pickens obviously does want to get paid, but you could tell a stark difference between him and, I think I talked about this last week, so I won't belabor on it a long time. But when you're looking at him in contrast to how he was in Pittsburgh, you can tell he's a lot happier. Even if there were times where we had the let down in effort, a little attitude stuff, you could tell that he was just far happier in Dallas. CeeDee Lamb is clearly a fantastic teammate, helped him get into the right headspace. Dak is obviously a wonderful person as well. So overall, and Brian Schottenheimer as well. Just overall, I think it's a great team environment for him. So I could see him maybe wanting to make a contract work. But at the end of the day, Dallas does not have a lot of money to burn at a wide receiver position when they have CeeDee Lamb, and they have to spend money on defense. They need to also upgrade and reinforce that offensive line. It's trending in a positive direction, but it needs an extra push to really get to where it needs to be. You've got Dak, and you need to keep him upright and help out the run game as well. So my gut tells me that we're getting the tag and trade situation for him. And if he goes to another location, we are not guaranteed that we will get the same level of targets, level of effort from him as well. So I think this is a good opportunity to sell on him, especially if he gets the big contract. That'll be very appealing. So you can sell now if you want to do it, put your feelers out there, see what your league mates are feeling. But it also wouldn't be a bad idea to wait until the contract comes, because you're either in a great situation of him staying with on the franchise tag with Dallas, or getting a contract to go to another location, and where he should in theory be the solo wide receiver one. So maybe New England takes a stab at him. You never know. So I think you could wait and then hold off for the contract to come and then trade him. But now would be an okay time as well. CeeDee Lamb would be more of a potential target for me, trying to bank on the likelihood of Dallas not being able to financially make it work, and CeeDee Lamb becoming again that unquestioned number one target. So I could now, as a Dynasty CeeDee Lamb manager, I ain't selling for cheap. That's my centerpiece right there in the receiving core. But I could see where someone might be frustrated and willing to move on for cheap, especially once we get that franchise tag, and maybe they start to panic that Pickens is going to be around for another year and really hurt that value for CeeDee Lamb. So yeah, I good idea to buy potentially on CD and trade potentially on Pickens. What's up? Shout out to the people to be commenting there in the chat. Hope you're having a wonderful day. And by the way, as I mentioned, Dallas is obviously cap space situation, not a ton of money to burn, and clear positions of need on the opposite side of the ball. But it is interesting when we look at free agency. Sorry, guys, I'm like a little under the weather. It is interesting. And I don't know why I got sick. That's weird. I haven't been sick in like a long time. So, but when we look at free agency, it's very interesting because you can always create cap space. Like Kansas City just restructured Patrick Mahomes' contract and somehow magically made $43 million appear. If you have good management, it can happen, right? Because it's not that hard. So it's very interesting. So maybe Dallas could find the money, but they've never really been able to. They find the money for those big offensive players and whatnot. But at the end of the day, I think it has to be spent on the defense. So we'll hedge our bets there. From Tri Lambs 32, where do you think Kyler Murray ends up? Maybe the Vikings. Kevin O'Connell is a great coach. I think he could make it work. He's proven wouldn't be the first Arizona quarterback he took and did, had some success with, and definitely was not of the same caliber of talent as Kyler Murray. Maybe. We know that they do want to potentially bring in competition there, because you can't hinge all of your hopes and dreams on JJ McCarthy, when of all the young first and second year quarterbacks, he has showed the least promise of all of them by far, right? I mean, even if we, unless you take it down to like a Dylan Gabriel level, then yeah, but apples to oranges, you tell me JJ McCarthy or Cam Ward. This is not a question. So JJ is a little shaky, unfortunately. I do think that because the the Jets do have so much money available, we could see them go that route. I think it would be kind of silly, but they have to have a quarterback. They could try to target one in the draft, but that is risky. Like if the problem is they have to get a veteran quarterback, because obviously this Justin Fields thing is not going to work, right? So, and they can't wait until the draft, because unfortunately, because of the whole, now maybe good things happen at the combine, and Ty Simpson, if he throws, he might not, but maybe he gets out there and maybe he really wows everybody and has good interviews and pushes himself up to the point where the Jets want to take them at their pick. But other than that, they would be risking going and playing chicken with teams in order to get a one of these other quarterbacks, outside of Fernando Mendoza. And that just feels a little bit risky to do. So my gut tells me that they are going to have to make a move for a quarterback early in this offseason. And sadly, Kyler might be the one. And if they're willing to, and we know Arizona wants to move on from them, It I don't have any faith in terms of the offensive situation. Now, granted, obviously he would have highly talented receiver that I do think he would mesh well with, and Garrett Wilson. So I think it's a possibility, right? As weird as that got, Kyler Murray in a Jets uniform would be crazy. But yeah, I do think that it is a wee bit of a possibility there. Let's see here. We have another question here from Henry Odom. Do you see Walker leaving Seattle? That is a perfect segue. Oh, hit my table. That is the perfect segue there that I do want to talk about there, because when we talked about Kenneth Walker last week, and I also did a free agency, my top 5 running back free agency rankings. And my perspective last week was that the Seahawks were probably going to franchise tag him. And we've gotten rumors that that is not going to happen, and that they have a lot of money, but they want to spend all that money on other positions that they need to retain, right? They want to start working on those contracts. They've got, multiple high-end obviously, they maybe, looking at early extensions for Jackson Smith and Jigba. Lots of defensive players that they could look at extending. So apparently they want to spend their money elsewhere and not at running back. And that one is a little bit interesting for me. And, some people say, how are you going to let, you're going to let the Super Bowl MVP walk? Like, it's not that, right? But when we're looking at Kenneth Walker, I thought prior to the Zach Charbonnet injury that for sure they were moving on. I didn't see any scenario in which they would re-sign him. And I'm a Kenneth Walker believer. I love him. Before this little playoff run, right? So even in my positivity with Kenneth Walker, I was fairly certain that he was not going to be a Seahawk. After Zach Charbonnet got injured, I thought, well, he's a Seahawk, because why on earth would Seattle want to risk next season not having Zach Charbonnet ready? Because the likelihood of him being ready is slim to none. And the likelihood of him coming in mid-season off an ACL and performing well is also, it's a 50-50 shot. A lot of times, most of the time, when running backs in that first year back, especially if they're coming back mid-season, and not just running backs, like it happens in multiple, even with wide receivers as well often, but especially with running backs, they come in mid-season and unfortunately they just don't look like the same person, because they need longer to really get back to full, capacity. And that's normal. Like that's a thing. They don't come back 100%. So a team that would be in a position to repeat and push for another Super Bowl, I thought that they would want to have a high-end option at running back and not risk it with Zach Charbonnet. But perhaps they look on the market and they see that there's, because one of the things that we're going to talk about here is additional wide receiver free agents. Additional running back free agents. So as I look at, the depth that we have at running back in free agency, and the draft class there's players in there, but there's not the same level of depth that we had last year. So as we're looking at free agency, perhaps they're looking at free agency and saying, I think we can work with this, and we can, sign somebody cheaper and short-term deal and make it work. Or perhaps they get in there and they find a running back they like and draft a young running back and do the same thing that they did before, because Zach Charbonnet is going to be a free agent next year. So they have to be thinking more long-term in terms of the position. So I'm surprised. So it sounds like Kenneth Walker is going to be hitting free agency. Imagine winning the Super Bowl, winning a VP, and hitting free agency. But good for him, because that is going to give him an opportunity to get a contract versus, the franchise tagging. So I'm looking at landing spots for Kenneth Walker is now that it looks like there's an increased likelihood of him leaving Seattle. 2 names stand out to me. It's Kansas City and Houston. Kansas City, obviously, the run game, I do think that Isaiah Pacheco isn't a free agent. I do think they move on from Isaiah Pacheco. Kareem Hunt's a free agent. That's kind of again, that's more of a nothing burger. He's not, a nothing burger for us. Unfortunately, he did have way more carries than he should have, but they need a true bell cow. And I think they want one. And they were treating Isaiah Pacheco like that at one point prior to the injury, which is what had all of us thinking, oh my God, this is it. And we were drafting him all high and feeling good about it. But at the end of the day, just, they never got back to it after he came back from the injury of really trusting him as a true 3-down back, which is interesting because as we kind of think about a wide variety of players who took extra time off after an injury to come back, it's entirely possible that Isaiah Pacheco comes back next year on another team and has a fantastic year. So keep that in mind. We'll talk about that, here in a second. But looking at Kenneth Walker, Kansas City, good fit. Again, they cleared up that cap space, good landing spot. But Houston is my dark horse candidate because Houston has proven one thing. They don't care about burning money on a running back and going to grab it. And not big money, right? But not stupid money. But they're not afraid to go out and say, hey, we want a veteran. We want somebody to come in here. And, whether that's them trading for a running back. Oh, my God. Yeah, trading for a running back and signing a running back or something. Like they have zero problem paying and giving money and trading picks and getting a running back. So signing Kenneth Walker as one of the top running backs on the market does actually make a lot of sense for them. And I think they want to have a strong run game. Obviously, I like Woody Marks a lot, but at the end of the day, they've shown that they will move on real quick from a rookie, unfortunately, and upgrade to what they deem to be a much more reliable veteran running back. So that is another one that I would really like. And I would like to see him because they want to be a balanced offense. They want to be able to lean on the run. They've got an aggressively strong defense. So in an ideal world, they have an offensive line that keeps CJ Stroud upright. They have a defense that can keep games close or they're playing from ahead. And they have a run game that is so strong that they can almost lean run heavy, at least 50-50, right? But maybe potentially be a little bit run heavy, keep the pace down a little bit and let the defense lead, kind of like a Seattle did this year. And Kenneth Walker would be the perfect person for that. So that was very, very interesting. Before I move, and looking at the comments here, Woody Marks is injury prone. Comment from Just Lift DFW. Let me see if I got any other running back comments here. No, that's it for the running backs. Although I will like to say thank you for the lovely comment, Lynn Wells. I appreciate that. And let's see. We'll talk about running backs here. Oh, wait. From Just Lift D, is it D1W? I said DFW. I'm in Texas, so I was reading DFW as if it was Dallas Fort Worth. D1W. I can comment is I can see the Steelers keeping Gainwell too. Also, Travis Hunter, I hope more offense. So these are two really good points that I want to talk about because one of the things I wanted to talk about was we talked about my top 5 running backs last week. I wanted to talk about my 6 through 10 running backs. Someone commented because I said, do you guys want to see this? And someone commented saying that they did. Looking at my remaining running back free agency rankings. Number 6, as a reminder, guys, I had Breece Hall, Kenneth Walker, Javonte Williams, Travis Etienne, and Rachaad White in my top 5. Yeah, Rachaad White. I think he's going to be a sneaky one because of the thing that I talked about last week is that he is a sneaky one because when you look at all these other running backs, aside from Kenneth Gainwell, so great comment there, outside of the top 5, aside from Kenneth Gainwell, Rachaad White is one of the few actually dynamic pass catchers. Everybody else can catch passes. They're fine. It's not a question. They can be 3-down backs. They can block. It's not an issue. They can get check downs. But if somebody is looking for that game changer type of receiving option, right, from a running back, Rachaad White and Kenneth Gainwell are those two guys. So I think they will get a lot of play in free agency. But I think the Steelers would love to keep him around. Obviously, we've got a change of regime. But Mike McCarthy, as I know him well as a Packers fan, if you look at Mike McCarthy's history, he likes very well balanced running backs. You need to be able to do everything with him. He wants a running back. He wants multiple running backs who have the ability to handle early down work, who have the ability to block, and who have the ability to be strong receiving options, right? Even if you go back to Green Bay with Jamal Williams and Aaron Jones, we often think of Jamal Williams and his time in Detroit and the way that it was that early down, early down with, what was it, DeAndre Swift back then, the early down and the third down. And then that was the year that Jamal Williams had the ridiculous rushing touchdowns because he was getting all the goal line touches. But he's actually a pretty a pretty fine blocker and pretty solid in terms of being a receiving option. So Mike McCarthy likes well-rounded backs because he likes to use them interchangeably. He does not like that steady, like, this is my early down back, this is my third down back. When you look at his history, he likes to be creative with them and not use them in that specific manner. So Kenneth Gainwell is literally perfect in his eyes, as you are, he's a very well-rounded back. He can carry early downs. He can catch, he can block. I mean, it would be very appealing. So I can absolutely see him staying. I know a lot of people will be bummed out by that because they want to see Caleb Johnson, especially those who drafted him in Dynasty. My God, I know you guys are suffering. They want to see Caleb Johnson get some play time and thrive. But I do worry that if blocking is just not his thing, if that's just not a manner in which he could be used, I get a little bit worried that he's not a guy that Mike McCarthy will love, unfortunately. So we'll see. Maybe he's spending the offseason developing. Hopefully, maybe we need to scour the internet and try and see if we can get any tips there. But at the end of the day, I do worry that they might keep Gainwell, which is fine because I love Gainwell. I own Dynasty shares of Gainwell. I would like him to stay in a location where I know he can thrive. Rather than risking him going somewhere else. Although I think he would do very well in Washington playing off of Ja'Cory Krosky-Merritt, who obviously, unfortunately, another situation of a young guy who's very talented on the ground, but you can't block, man. You can't do it. They can't trust you on third downs, unfortunately, and you got to earn that trust. And if you can't do it, it is a major problem. Appreciate the super sticker there from Just Lift D1W. Thank you so much. Very kind. Jumping back to the question, actually, before I jump back to the other questions, unless I need to take an ad break at some point, but before I jump back at the questions there, my 6 through, actually, we won't do just 6 through 10. We'll do 6 and beyond. My 6th ranked running back in free agency is Rico Dowdle. Obviously, again, we're talking about somebody who is very proven in terms of being capable of being a lead back. But not on that level that we have for the Travis Etiennes and Javonte Williams and obviously Kenneth Walker and Breece Hall, right? So he pushes down a little bit when we figure where he's going to be out of Carolina, unfortunately, because we know he's been very vocal. And I like that when players tell us exactly what they want. He's vocal. He felt burned by Dallas. He did not like the fact that Carolina reverted and started taking away those touches from him. So he wants to be a lead back. He wants play time. So he's going to, doing that in Carolina is risky. They've proven they unfortunately have no loyalty to the position, which is not a bad thing. Hey, I'm not criticizing them for that. But when it comes to these players, they got to be careful because we have seen time and time again, we saw Miles Sanders, we saw Chuba Hubbard, and we see Rico Dowdle. They're not afraid. If they don't like exactly what they're getting out of you, or perhaps they like someone a little bit better, they're not afraid to flip the script on you. They will do it at the drop of a hat and they don't care. So for that in mind, I do think Rico will exit and could potentially be one of those good buy low. So like maybe a Seattle that is thinking, okay, we're just going to move on from Kenneth Walker. We're not going to pay that contract because obviously this man performed way too well in the playoffs and the Super Bowl, and we just can't afford that now. Somebody else has got to pay him that big contract. So perhaps a guy like Rico Dowdle is a good solution because the only issue is that I don't think that Rico Dowdle and Zach Charbonnet would play well off of each other. That's not a good combination. You need there's thunder, you need the lightning. So, but we'll see. But that type of situation for him. After Rico Dowdle, I have Brian Robinson. Again, another similar back who, 3-down capable. Obviously, when he was in Washington, he was splitting work with Austin Eckler. But at the end of the day, a fine option for a team that is looking for a more budget-friendly early down back or goal line back. Isaiah Pacheco, I mentioned as another sneaky one. Like, And we often get burned by these day three, good Lord, these day three running backs that pop up in the even day two, right? That pop up in late day two, that pop up into prominence, have a good year, and then disappear. And it's entirely possible that could happen with Isaiah Pacheco, but also, again, because we know that he came back from the injury and didn't quite look like himself, this could be another situation where, again, like a Javonte Williams, a Tony Pollard was one where he looked awful. What was it? A broken ankle, right? He looked awful after his surgery. And it took him that season of returning plus some time. He was not himself towards until the end of the season that he returned from. So it's entirely possible that Isaiah Pacheco just needs a little more time, unfortunately. And maybe he can return to himself after this season, right? So maybe 2026 is a good bounce back for him. He'll be very cost effective. He's not coming in at a very high cost. Last time I looked at his, market value, it was like 4 million. That's probably pushing it a little. After that, I have Tyler Algier ranked right after Isaiah Pacheco. Algier is a very sneaky one. We talked about him on last week's show. We have seen Tyler Algier operate as a 3-down back. He is solid, full, all capabilities. Blocking is not an issue. Catching the ball in checkdowns is not an issue. Goal line work, obviously, is strong. So that's a good little sneaky buy low opportunity. If he please make it out of Atlanta, man. If he makes it out of Atlanta and hits free agency, I absolutely could see him getting some good play on the market there and maybe popping up on a good situation. So that is one to keep your eye on as well. J.K. Dobbins obviously is somebody who, when he's healthy, performs well. There was during the season, his fantasy production went down, but his efficiency did not go down. It was just a production overall issue in terms of him not getting the touchdowns. Unfortunately, they kind of diminished at one point in the pass catching opportunities, just because, again, we started to see more of that increased usage for RJ Harvey. So Dobbins looked fine, but we will, have to see where he lands and what happens there. After that, I've got Kenneth Gainwell. Again, just really well-rounded pass catching options. So there's a ton of opportunity for him to fall into place and be fantasy relevant. So that's a really good one for you to potentially look at buying or keep your eye on, especially if he does, again, stay in Pittsburgh. That would be wonderful. And after that, there's some guys. Najee Harris, unfortunately, the injury, we don't know what he'll look like and what kind of chance the team would want to take on him. Emmanuel Wilson is a free agent, now he's a restricted free agent. Bear in mind, this is a restricted free agent. So is Sean Tucker. But Emmanuel Wilson looked really good in spelling Josh Jacobs this season. Sean Tucker, obviously, we know he is a strong runner, can't block, sadly, but a strong runner. And then other running backs hitting the market will be guys like, and these are restricted free agents as well, Jaleel McLaughlin and Keaton Mitchell. And then, of course, Kareem Hunt, the older guys, Kareem Hunt and Nick Chubb. But that wraps things up at the running back position. I'm going to jump back to the questions here real quick. We've got some good running back questions. I'm going to take a short break here. I'm going to drink some water, and we are going to hear a quick word from our sponsors. And I will be right back after this.
If you play in Dynasty, you need Dynasty Deluxe, our premium package for Dynasty Leaguers. We rank over 300 players, updated every week, all year long. And there's a win now mode and a rebuild mode with Superflex and tight end premium controls. And a Dynasty League sync where you can say, sync down all of my sleeper teams, all my FFPC teams. And then you can browse around your leagues for who has needs. And then you can use our trade finder to see what kinds of trades are happening in leagues that are similar to the one I want to do. Then you can analyze trades using our trade analyzer, which balances the lifetime value, which includes pick values out to like 2028. All of that plus the rookie guide, $25 value is included. So if you're just in one Dynasty League, Dynasty Deluxe is well worth it. And use your host's promo code, and you can bump up to all in and get $25 off.
All right, we are back. Jumping back to some running back comments here. Check Ray's Bluff says Jonathan Brooks season, hopefully. If he can stay healthy, man, I hope. I worry for him that, again, it's just a fragile body situation. So unfortunate. So unfortunate. Especially because this was a Dynasty first round pick for a lot of people there. So, I mean, and at this point, he's probably not on the same team that drafted him, probably bouncing around and being traded for late round picks. But that's an interesting one to potentially take a stab at, because I've seen his value is just stupid low at this point. So it is entirely possible that he comes back healthy, stays healthy, and is able to earn that job, because, Chuba unfortunately proved that he might not be able to hold on to it 100% there. Lift D1W. Johnson didn't even get a chance to play last year. He's a big back. Yeah, Caleb Johnson. Yeah, and unfortunately, the thing about it is I wish that he was I wish he was a little bit more experienced from a pass catching perspective. Because Jalen, now granted, again, we've got regime change. So, Mike McCarthy will have his own thoughts and opinions. So the love that Steelers had for Jalen Warren may not, it may not translate to McCarthy, but Jalen Warren seems like a McCarthy type of running back. But Warren's versatility and the ability to be an early down back, proven finally that he can actually be an early down back, in addition to a pass catching back, makes it tough. Let's see here. Yeah, and you also say that Brooks, the Panthers have to give it a try. Yeah, if he's healthy, got to give it a try on this one. Now, this one is interesting. Leaving James Conner, done, outright cut. I think so. And obviously, and what is his age? James Conner is, oh shoot, he's not on this list. James Conner's age is, why did that not pop up? You're going to make me do math on that. 30. He's 30 years old. Going to be turning 31 in a couple of months. Which is unfortunate. Yeah. We're talking, serious injury, 31 years old. Unfortunately, it might be a put out to pasture time. But Arizona is interesting, right? Because, and perhaps Arizona is a sneaky candidate to sign one of these cheaper guys as well. Because if they move on from James Conner, and do they trust Trey Benson to carry the workload? Because heading into the season, we thought, they were very vocal about the fact, and even James Conner was like, yeah, it's 1A, 1B, or we're co-lead backs or something like that, I can't remember what the language that he used was, but even James Conner was like, yeah, we're, team, we're in this together. And the Cardinals, all of their words and everything, and made it seem like this was going to be a 1A, 1B situation, a split usage committee situation. And initially it did seem that way. But ultimately we really didn't get to see it. And then we didn't get to see Trey Benson by himself. So, so we've got a new regime here. The draft capital and Trey Benson wasn't that dramatic. It was, it was day 2, second round, but it wasn't like, oh my God, we gotta, this is our guy, we gotta keep him forever kind of investment. So yeah, they could be one to potentially be looking at adding a running back, because probably looking at moving on from James Conner, sadly. Here's another running back one. Alvin Kamara, do you think he is still the starter? I don't. And, he's a funny one. Actually, New Orleans is a funny one. New Orleans... I love reading all the recommendations of New Orleans, signings and free agency and stuff. Because while teams can always find money and kicking cans down the field, or kicking the can on down the line in terms of their salary cap, New Orleans, I don't think, is in the position to do that anymore, because if they have to, and it does appear that they're just sucking it up and like, hey, this is it. Right? And we can't continue forward. We just have to eat the salary cap and just do it. And we have to eat the dead cap, do it, move on, and just, look for brighter days ahead when we can finally spend money. And they still don't have money to spend, unfortunately. And I don't know that they're a popular location to be like, they can sign this running back, they can sign this wide receiver. And I'm like, they need to not sign anyone. They need to save money and they need to invest in the draft. Their scouts should be out there trying to find some young talent, because free agency additions are really, really rough for them. They can find some cost-effective ones, right? There's always money to spend, but they can't be spending big money. So yeah, there's a lot of like popular, New Orleans is a landing spot. I don't think it's going to happen, but I anticipate what I do buy is in a lot of mock drafts, people have New Orleans drafting a running back. Now, New Orleans has not drafted who we have thought in terms of mock drafts in a couple of years. They always go a little bit different direction. I think at this point, I feel like they're more inclined to go in the direction of like best available talent, right? And not necessarily pinpointing positions, but taking a running back as their replacement for Alvin Kamara seems like a good route for them. They're often mocked to draft a running back even in the first round. And Alvin Kamara has stated he's not going anywhere. Could they be at the point where they would want to cut him? I can't off the top of my head, I can't remember if they could actually even save money, if it makes financial sense for them to cut him. But I don't think he's the starter. Let me see if it makes financial sense for them to cut him. Oof, Christ. He's a $18 million cap hit this year. I think he'll be on the roster. But it's 18 million dead cap anyway, so maybe it's just kind of like a wash of like, because he's made it clear that he does not want to, he's not going anywhere. I've never seen anybody so adamantly refuse to leave. I get, and I don't blame him. If he has no aspirations of winning, if he's happy with his career as is, I don't blame him for wanting to leave New Orleans. The food is fantastic. So maybe he's just at home and he doesn't want to relocate. And he doesn't want to go anywhere cold or where he can't get a decent beignet. So perhaps he just wants to stay put. So they're not going to be able to trade him. Now they can trade him, but he literally said that he will be sipping pina coladas if they trade him. So he would retire before they trade him. He doesn't want to leave. So they're going to have to bring in somebody else. But to that end, if he doesn't want to leave, perhaps they, unfortunately just make him the change of pace back, exclusively a pass catching back, and give majority of the work or early down work to a new running back. So we could see that shift in Alvin Kamara. Obviously, when we're looking at, I don't have rankings up right now. Look, I'm so ill prepared for this show. When we're looking at rankings right now, where is Alvin Kamara? I could just search. Whew! Running back 42. That's appropriate. Good. We're all thinking the same thing. Unfortunately, there. He is running back 42 currently in draft. Is that standard or no? That's half PPR. Okay. Running back 42 in early 2026 draft rankings in half PPR. Yeah, that obviously is in anticipation of him not being the starter there. So more than likely, unfortunately, we missed our sell opportunity on Alvin Kamara. The time might be over. And it's unfortunate because we were hoping that he would get traded to a spot that would be good for him, because it's not as if he looked like he was completely washed. It's that the usage was very strange. They weren't giving him receiving work out of the backfield. It just, this usage of Alvin Kamara just didn't make logical sense. So we'll see. But unfortunately, I think the time is up. Jumping back to the comments here because I think there's a few that I missed earlier here. From Just Lift, D1W, Brandon Ayuk, should I drop him? What about Tank Dell? Brandon Ayuk, don't. My position on Brandon Ayuk is that he is going to be courted by somebody. So one, I don't think the injury is an issue. This is unlike I'm traumatized by Kenny Golladay. That was the most horrific situation, right? But I don't think this is a Kenny Golladay situation in the fact that the injury is a concern, right? I don't think this is like a Joe Mixon situation where the injury was keeping him off the field. We saw Brandon Ayuk video wise. We saw him on the field. We saw him running routes. That's enough for me to feel good. What we saw was enough for me to feel good about the fact that he was on track to return and there was not a physical issue. It was just a personality issue, unfortunately. I did a video on him and potential landing spots. I do think that we will see, because he's a very talented player. I just think there's something wrong with him in terms of the attitude. It's beyond diva. Like, I compare it to a Stephon Diggs. When you look at Stephon Diggs, like, yeah, he's a contentious guy. Yeah. Right. And, some off-field stuff, to say the least. But when you look at Stephon Diggs, and despite the fact that he is the drama, teams are willing to sign him because they know he's talented and they know he will show up on the field and they know he will put up on the field. When it comes to Brandon Ayuk, you have a player that willingly foregoed stepping on the field and that has stalled in contract situations before. And that after he forced you into a contract that you didn't want to do, he then underperformed significantly before he got hurt. Those are red flag things. Like, I can get past George Pickens' attitude problem or whatever. Okay, man's a little off, whatever. He's highly talented. I don't care because I know he can put up extreme numbers on the field, and I know that I can, if we've got the right coaching staff and teammates, we can get him in the right place where he's in a good mindset and he's having a good time and he is performing. I don't know that I can say the same thing about Brandon Ayuk. So he's extremely risky. So don't drop him, but you're holding on to him because a contract will come at some point this offseason. I think it'll be a 1-year deal from a contender team that is looking for maybe who can afford to take a risk on him for 1 year, see if that can be the boost to get them to a Super Bowl. And once he gets that contract, sell him. Yeah. So don't drop. You can sell. I think that, because he's Brandon Ayuk, people will buy for something. As soon as he gets that contract, sell. Let's see here. Oh, wait. And also you mentioned Travis Hunter in offense. So the news came out that it sounds like the Jags are going to use Travis Hunter more on defense, which is horrific for dynasty managers that took him in the first. I took him in the first in a IDP league. I still think I might, I didn't take him first overall, right? Ashton Genty was already taken, so I'm not crazy. But I think I can still make out okay when I look at the other players that were drafted behind him. I don't feel a massive amount of regret. But for fantasy managers who drafted an offensive player and they only get offensive points, I got a bad feeling, unfortunately. And I think that it's probably going to go this direction, and I'm not shocked. Now, I am somewhat shocked because he finally did, before he got injured, put up a strong wide receiver performance. But at the end of the day, the Jags have a problem in the fact that they have too many pass catchers, unfortunately. When you're looking at, Travis Hunter, Brian Thomas Jr., Jacoby Myers, who they gave a contract, Parker Washington. And when you're looking at all of that, you're trying to do the math. And I think Parker Washington's breakout was for real. You got to forget, like, last year was his 3rd year in the league. And he had a very strong statistical season, and that was not including the fact that he did not become a starter until around 6, 7, 8 weeks, 6, 7, 8, something like that. The season that he had, I think it was a sneaky little 3rd year breakout season, and that what we're going to see is the continued progression of him forward in this offense. And I would not be shocked if a lot of that wasn't just, Liam Cohen, but also Trevor Lawrence, because when we were looking at Trevor Lawrence with Jacoby Myers, Brian Thomas Jr., and Parker Washington on the field, that man loved Parker Washington. And it is not the first time that has happened. So I think there's a level of rapport there. And I wouldn't be shocked if we see an increase in usage for him to where he is the regular starter there next year. So yeah, I unfortunately think we might see a lot of Travis Hunter on defense. And because they need help, on that end, and they are stacked at wide receiver, oddly, well, as long as Brian Thomas Jr. turns things around, but they have a lot of bodies, a lot of strong bodies at wide receiver. And unfortunately, Travis Hunter might have to be the odd one out because of the fact that he can go on defense and then come in situationally as a receiver. So it might unfortunately be limited usage on offense. Now, maybe it can still somewhat work out from a fantasy perspective if, when he comes in, it's very intentional, meaning, i.e., he comes in, gets snaps, and gets targets, right? So high target to snap ratio, maybe. But unfortunately, it's looking a little shaky, in my opinion. From Manny, man, are we done drafting tight ends in the early rounds? Sadly, no. I don't think. Sadly, no. I think people are still going to push. I don't do it. I don't enjoy it really. I prefer to push tight end a little further back. I don't mind a fourth round investment into a tight end. I took a lot of, decent amount, unfortunately. I took a little Kittle last year. Brock Bowers was just way too high. Once you start teetering in close to a borderline round 1 pick, I just think that's egregious. But unfortunately, I do think we are still going to see Trey McBride pushed up significantly. When I'm looking at overall rankings right now, McBride is obviously the overall tight end one, right? Clearly. But he is pick number 16. So I don't think we're ever going to escape the early round tight ends. And also, with a new quarterback, new coach, optimism, we're still going to get Brock Bowers drafted pretty early too. Brock is a second round pick still in rankings. And then after that, I think it does drop off a little bit because there is no clear consensus tight end 3 right now. Tight end 3 is Colston Loveland, but that whole 3 to maybe 6 range is a little bit in flux, right? With Harold Fannin Jr. obviously being up there, so I think that it's going to be a big 2 going in the second round, and then we're going to get a pretty significant drop off to maybe like the 4th round of being the next time that we see a tight end come off the board in Colston Loveland. So my position would probably be the same as what I've taken. If you want to draft one of those guys at the first, in the second round, that's fine. Not my preference. I would prefer to wait. I think the value that you will get probably on those kind of mid round tight ends will be fine. Or you can try and find your little diamond in the rough, right? So no, unfortunately, I think we're still going to see it happening, sadly. Let's see here. Jumping back to the comments. Oh, we got quarterbacks. Henry Odom is this a early quarterback year in redraft? Let's jump to the rankings real quick. By the way, I'm looking not at my rankings right now. I'm looking at the consensus rankings on Fantasy Pros, just so we can get a broad perspective, not my single perspective, so we can understand where these guys are going in drafts. But when we're looking at, and these are honestly, pretty standard stuff here. Josh Allen obviously is going to still stay at the top. Drake May is the overall QB2. That one's peculiar to me. I never think it's a bad thing to draft Josh Allen early because the upside is so amazing for him. Even if, it's a weird passing year, I mean, he'll still get his on the ground. So I have zero problem with drafting Lamar Jackson early. Drake May is a weird one for me. I would not go there, especially after the Super Bowl performance, knowing that they need to make adjustments to that offensive line, knowing that they need an additional weapon at wide receiver. In a Super Bowl potential hangover there because of the performance being so off, Super Bowl hangovers in general, but because the performance was so dreadful, I can't see a scenario where I'm taking Drake May that high. Now I have multiple Drake May Dynasty shares, so I hope that I'm wrong. I can't come off of him. You're just going to have to grit it and bear it for a year on that one. But I do have a little bit of fear of taking him that high. That's egregious. After that, it's Lamar Jackson, Joe Burrow, Jane Daniels, Jalen Hurts. I'm not opposed to it, but I think we've got a nice little range here in the low end QB1s in guys like Trevor Lawrence, who I love. who is coming in at QB9 right now. Caleb Williams obviously showed a significant leap last year. I think that progresses forward and they continue to build off of that. Brock Purdy is always extremely steady, and I think they will add in another pass catcher, a high-end pass catcher, so don't be shocked there if they move on from Juwan Jennings, who was, again, an interesting – I feel like he's an interesting free agency asset. I think that he will leave just because we do know that his priority is money, which I'm, again, no – when I say I'm like a player's priority is money or this, I have zero problem with that. Players, get your bags, whatever. Prioritize your money and your family. But because of that, I don't know if San Francisco will give them the contract that he wants. So I would anticipate him leaving for whoever will pay the most for him. And they need to replace with an actual true wide receiver one there in San Francisco. Sadly can't depend on Ricky Pearsall, unfortunately. But then you've got Dak Prescott, Patrick Mahomes, obviously injury being a concern there, bounce back. Matt Stafford, right? Then Bo Nix, Jordan Love, Jared Goff. Yeah. I think I'm more inclined to wait this year. I will always consider guys like Josh Allen and Lamar Jackson because at the end of the day, I lean running quarterback heavy, and those two guys I trust. Obviously, when we're looking at Lamar Jackson's 2025 season, highly disappointing. It was purely an injury issue. I like the coaching change that is coming in. I think it'll be positive for him, and I don't dislike Todd Monken in any way, shape, or form. But I think switching things up will be positive for him, and probably adding a new pass catcher there. But more so than anything, when he was healthy at the very beginning of the season, he was top 5. Easy. So when he's healthy, he's fine. He just unfortunately got injured early and he couldn't shake it. And I know that's going to trigger the, running quarterback injuries. Lamar Jackson, is he reliable? But we had multiple years of reliability from Lamar Jackson on the field. We've got to lean back into it and trust it. So no, I don't think this is an early quarterback redraft year. Again, I will never have a problem with drafting Josh Allen or Lamar Jackson early rounds. But outside of that, yeah, get me into that Trevor Lawrence to Matt Stafford range is where I want to be at in terms of taking a stab at a quarterback for sure. And if you even want to wait longer than that and, draft a couple ones even later than that, I mean, I'm not opposed to going with a Bo Nix and then pairing him up with maybe a Tyler Shock, or it's like in platooning or something, because there's options. So now I think, when I'm looking at early redraft rankings, what I'm noticing is that I think we've got a nicer range of running backs. And I realized that as we're closing in on the show, I didn't go into all of the questions. So I will have to do that again next week, but that's perfectly fine. But as I'm looking at the running backs, I think we've got a wider range. Like last year, the cliff for me was Kenneth Walker. And unfortunately, the cliff was actually right before Kenneth Walker, but close enough. And it was a lot sooner. So but around RB 15, 16 was the cliff last year. I think that you can push it all the way to RB 25 of guys that you would still feel comfortable getting. So I think we've got a wider range of running backs that will be reliable towards that low end RB2 area. And we want to hammer in on the wide receivers early as well. So I think there's value to be had in those early rounds, and then waiting a little bit on quarterback might be a good thing here. Unless we see quarterbacks slipping a little bit with the way that they performed, but I don't see it happening. Let's see here. Grab, like this one. We'll close out and answer some of these other questions here. Henry Odom, is Chris Olave a second round pick in redraft? Yes. I love Olave. He's so talented. I've been waiting for the ascension of Olave for the Saints to get a quarterback that could actually get him the ball. Who would have thought it would be Tyler Shough? Shough looked very good in his rookie season, considering the fact that obviously he did not start the season. And I know people will say, well, how good could you be? You had to, you were fighting for a job with Spencer Rattler. That was New Orleans. I think that they did not instinctually want to start a rookie right away and that they were perfectly fine with going with Rattler because they weren't trying to compete. But Rattler ended up being such a disaster that they had to just go ahead and make that switch. And I like what I saw out of Shuck. The mobility was good. He handled volume very well. And more importantly, the man threw touchdowns. He threw touchdowns. And he actually threw high level of targets to our boy. So, and he didn't throw him hospital balls. Tyler Shuck is a good man in my eyes. So shout out to Tyler Shuck. Yes, I love Chris Olave, second round draft pick. We'll be taking a lot of him. Love, love, love. Let's see. What's up? Bomb C Brayer. What's up to you? Oh, good question. Johansson, have you ever thought about hosting a fantasy football league for your YouTube subs? And if so, what would you name it? Ooh, good question. I have legitimately never thought of that because I have only been a commissioner of a league when I was co-commissioner, because I know myself and I know that my ability to approve trades and whatnot in a timely manner would be suspect. I should probably give it a try though. One season. I haven't thought about it. It would be fun though. Maybe. I'll have to think about that. And what would I name it? I'm a reality TV show junkie, so I guarantee it would be named after some kind of reality TV show. I watch a lot of Big Brother, Survivor, love Big Brother. I've always wanted to go on one of those. That's, yeah. One day you guys will see me on Survivor or Big Brother. One day when my kids are older and I can actually leave them. And lots of other reality TV shows. Yeah, let's see. Let's get us on Survivor. And then we'll, after that, we can transition me to Traders. I would be excellent on Traders. So we're gonna get Tara into the reality TV circuit there, so we can see these football analytics skills applied to Survivor or Big Brother or something like that. Or maybe one of you guys go on Amazing Race with me or something. I don't watch that show, but there's options. Let's see here. From Just Lift, Josh Allen never gets hurt, so durable, unreal. And that's one thing to say, reliability, and that's why he always will remain the overall QB1, right? Because at the end of the day, he's pretty, and that's why when I say, hey, if I'm looking early rounds, I'm perfectly okay with taking Josh Allen and Lamar Jackson, even though obviously health is an issue with Lamar Jackson. But that's why I kind of stop right there and I don't go into the Joe Burrow of it all. Like, I could put Jalen Hurts on there because Hurts is pretty reliable too. But oddly enough, I mean, it's crazy that Burrow is not a running quarterback, but has been the least physically reliable of all of these guys. Very interesting. Leaving, just wait for Stafford in one QB leagues. Yeah, I think so. I mean, there shouldn't be from my perspective, and mind you, Stafford came into this season with a back injury, which was crazy. We were questioning if he was going to even be able to play. He high level. I didn't see any issues. So yeah, and there should not be any changes. I think I think they do have to make some additions at offensive line because I think one of their linemen retired. But they'll handle that fine. They always make sure that they make the right investments at offensive line. And then the only change that I see coming with the Rams is potentially that I worry a little bit about Kyren Williams, because I do think the split between Kyren Williams and Blake Corum is for real. And I don't think it's going to change, unfortunately. So that one worries me a little bit. I don't think there will be no job being taken away. No, I'm not saying that whatsoever. I love Kyren Williams. I'm a backer of Kyren Williams, defender of him as always. But I fear the 50-50 is legit, unfortunately. And I think that's where we're going to be, because it was more of like, it wasn't 50-50. But there was a lot of Blake Corum there, and it was pretty reliable. And I fear that 50-50 may be what we see in 2026. So if you're thinking about Kyren Williams and where you're drafting him, I just caution you to trust him as I would not trust him as my hero RB. Let me put it that way. Yeah, that is the way that I would put it. Yes. Yes. Names for leagues, Average Joe, Sports Show, and then Judge Roberts. Yes. Like all those things. Yeah. Good show, guys. I had other stuff that I was going to talk about, but we have hit that 1 hour mark as we always do, because I do love yapping for sure. But yes, we will have to continue the conversation next week. We'll talk more free agency. We'll talk more draft stuff because obviously we got the combine coming here, and there will be a lot of changes moving forward here, and we're getting more and more rumors coming out, and hopefully we'll have some more franchise tag information too. So we'll have a good conversation here next week, same time, same place, Wednesday at 8 p.m. EST. Yes, I'm on Central Time, so sometimes I get confused. But Wednesday at 8 p.m. Central Time, or 8 p.m. Eastern Time. Appreciate you all tuning in. Just as a reminder, as always, I do appreciate a sub to the YouTube channel, to the It's Terra Time YouTube channel, and also support to the Player Profiler Network, who this podcast is through for sure. And then also the podcast is available on all podcast platforms. But outside of that, I appreciate you all tuning in. I will talk to you again next week. Have a fantastic week. Enjoy the off season. We'll talk next week. Bye, guys.